Mhm.
Okay. Hello, Sarah. I've done a video with you before, and today we're gonna be talking about love.
Okay.
All right. So the first reading that I will go through will be by Maria Lugones, and she talks about playfulness and world traveling and loving perception.
Mhm.
Basically, she just talks about a cross-cultural and cross-racial loving that emphasizes the need to understand and affirm the plurality in and amongst women as central to feminist ontology and epistemology. And its love is seen not as a fusion or erasure of indifference, but as incompatible with them. So love
Incompatible with what?
with them.
Uh-huh.
So love means plurality, right? And it's not to be confused with solidarity. It's understood as conceptually tied to domination. Something that I underlined in my reading is racism has a vested interest in obscuring and devaluing the complex skills involved in it.
You may want to shut that door because the bird is interrupting.
1 second. Okay, welcome back, and we have another friend with us. So another point that I highlighted was something that she spoke about, Maria Lugones spoke about in understanding love to
Mhm.
her was being able for her to, she's Mexican, of Mexican origin, I believe, and she talks about it as an immigrant in the United States, and she talks about it in the sense of just being able to travel between worlds, right?
Mhm.
And she says, we learn to perceive others arrogantly or come to see them only as products of arrogant perception and continue to perceive them that way. We fail to identify with them, fail to love them in this particularly deep way. So how do you feel about, like, in your life, you've been working with the State Department, and just in your jobs, you've dealt with people from many different nations, and right, so you've learned to be able to travel to these different worlds, even if it's only in one person, and you've learned to love them for who they are. Can you like tell me about your experience with that?
Well, I think that once you're around people from different cultures for a period of time, you begin to see them as individuals.
Mhm.
And the problem with other cultures is often with people who really don't have much personal exposure. They may see them on the street or get waited on in the 7-Eleven, or have a professor in the university that's from another culture, but they're not getting involved. On the other hand, there is a tendency especially for young women, to fall in love with another culture and to have a relationship, sometimes get married and go on with someone from another culture. There's something in the otherness of the culture that is very attractive and very romantic. So what do I think that a Spaniard is? What do I think that an Englishman is, or a Frenchman? I would speak of that because I'm a woman and I would be
Right.
thinking about men, but I think that that it takes exposure, and exposure doesn't guarantee that everyone is going to love each other. Otherwise, the history of the world wouldn't be read with wars and battles. But I do think that that you have to begin to see people as individuals, and the same thing applies to your parents,
Mhm.
because you see your parents as your mom and your dad, and it's very difficult to love them just as people, as individuals. And I noticed that I didn't come to that until I was in my 30s, maybe. And you stop looking at yourself as a reaction to your parents, or your parents as a reaction or responsible for you, and start seeing them as individuals. Then you can forgive and love them.
So going off of that, like our parents' love, like Lugones talks about servility and or a writer talks about servility and comparing it to love.
Mhm.
Does servility equal love? Or
No, servility is a matter of dominance
yes, exactly.
and
So
subservience. So dominance and submission. So I wouldn't say that servility is love, because
right.
you can be servile to someone that you're deathly afraid of.
Mhm. So going back, it wasn't in this writing, but I remember that from a couple of weeks before we read about love. Just how Lugones talks about how her mother expressed her love when showing her that, showing her she would serve her food, make her food, she would make her food every day.
But that's not
And
servility.
no, that's not servility, but
Yeah.
I'm just calling that to mind. So that's how she saw it. But Lugones saw that in her mom, and she realized that that's how her mom displayed her love,
Yes.
or showed her that she loved her. But Lugones decided that she didn't want to show love that way. She wanted to show it a different way. And that's where Lugones talks about like traveling to other people's worlds to see if you're accepted in their world, or see if you accept yourself in another world.
So she's testing love, or I'm not sure I understand.
Not testing love, but just showing herself as she is to see if she can love herself.
Okay, so she's working on actually loving herself.
Yeah.
So her mom serving her soup and vegetables and things wasn't successful in causing her to love herself as she felt she should.
She just saw it as like a gaucho, like the way her family loved was just a different way that she didn't see that she wanted to love that way. She didn't identify with that way of loving. So
because it's I believe it's a valid way of showing love.
It is. Okay, so I think I highlighted something here. It says, what is wrong is that I was taught to practice enslavement of my mother and to learn to become a slave to this practice. And somehow, like she is saying that she doesn't want, like I told you, she doesn't want to be that. She understands
with
that this
anybody or with her family, or when she would go to these other cultures, she wouldn't want to serve them a dinner or to show her care and her love or her attraction to them, or that she just, I mean, what I'm questioning is, did she just reject serving people and working for them, or did she want to experiment with some other ways of showing love? Because that that was a mother's love for her daughter, and that's what she did. And I'm imagining that her mother must have immigrated here from Mexico.
She did.
And so she didn't grow up in the way that her daughter did.
Exactly.
And it's not uncommon for children.
Enrique Francia.
Can we stop for just a second? This is a call.
Okay, so I'll just start. She writes, I am glad that I did not learn my lessons well, but it is clear that part of the mechanism that permitted my not learning well involved a separation from my mother. I saw us as beings of quite a different sort. And it involved an abandoning of my mother while I longed not to abandon her. I wanted to love my mother, though given what I was taught, love couldn't not be the right word for what I longed for. I was disturbed by my not wanting to be what she was. I had a sense of not being quite integrated. Myself was missing because I could not identify with her. I could not see myself in her. I could not welcome her world. I saw myself as separate from her, a different sort of being, not quite of the same species. This separation, this lack of love I saw, and I think that I saw correctly as a lack in myself, not a fault, but a lack. I also see that if this was a lack of love, love cannot be what I was taught. Love has to be rethought, made anew. So she sees herself as being more independent, and the more independent that she's left to be, the world and the integrity do not require her at all. So there's no sense of self loss for her own lack of solidity.
Mhm.
Basically, she just wants to find love in her own terms. She doesn't want to find it in the eyes of her mother. Does that
Well,
explain it?
many children don't want to live and find their love or attachment in the same way as their parents.
Yeah.
I mean, I think psychologists for a long time have identified that separation of identity that
Yeah.
occurs in growing up.
So that's what
But
it is.
I don't necessarily, I mean, she's talking about something that I think is not uncommon, because a child grows up and they haven't been tested, and they look at anything their parents are that doesn't measure up to what they think their friends do or somebody else does, and they condemn it, or they want to be separate from it. I would hope that she would come to some kind of maturity, which you might, in going further in the article, maybe that appears, but find love in my own way. I think she will undoubtedly find love in her own way, but she won't necessarily gain by rejecting her mother's love.
Well, she says that she wants to abandon her, but she doesn't abandon her.
Good, that's
But
nice.
yeah. So like, and in that sense,
But the fact that she wants to abandon her means to me that she's afraid of being identified with her mother. That if she's very close and attached to her mother, she will fall into that same life. When
Right.
I left the southern city that I had lived in for a few years, when we came back to the United States, I just wanted out. And that's how I came to Washington, D.C. And I think that sometimes it's not so much love as it is escaping from the limitations you identify in your parents. So she doesn't want to end up like her mother.
Yeah.
Not that she doesn't love her mother, but I hope she works through that.
And she does. So then she talks about the world and the world traveling, and just that so she talks about an attribute, which is playfulness.
That's one form of showing love.
Yeah. So playfulness being that let's see, where can I find it? So basically she means, for something to be a world in my sense, it has to be inhabited at present by flesh and blood people, and
Mhm.
basically a utopia. So basically just traveling to people's world, traveling to, let's say, like when I came here to go to
Mhm.
school, I am being soaked into your world because
Uh-huh.
I am living with you, I'm sharing with you, and I
Correct.
see you 24/7. So that's me coming into your world, and just
Yeah.
and your world is very different from what my world was in New Jersey, right?
I would guess, yeah.
Yeah, because over there in New Jersey, all I did was go to the gym, talk to my mom, talk to my sister, and then just, or I was working. I was waiting tables.
Right.
And then coming here, it's a different world because now I'm more scholarly. I'm going to school.
You're
and
reading all these good readings.
yeah. And I'm speaking to you, which you're a different world, like in your mind, like in your brain, you have a whole different world, and it's just beautiful to be talking to you because you had a government position, you were a diplomat of sorts, and just all your knowledge and all that you tell me every day, like you give me pushback on what I say, and then I give you pushback on what you say.
Yeah, and it's a good
And-
exchange. I enjoy that.
So it's just like this world traveling that she's talking. This is how I understand Lugones is world traveling. Like just
No, I think, well, I'm not criticizing her.
no, I know.
I'm just
I know.
hoping she goes further
She does.
in her explorations.
So
But it's good to see how different people live and different cultures. I mean, I know some Iraqis, and the daughter's relationship to her father
Yeah.
is so loving and so wonderful. He's so
Mhm.
caring of her, and in a different way of his son. Their mother is caring. I love the way that Peruvians express emotion so strongly. I love that my New Zealand stepchildren are and New Zealand and Latino, I guess, are very expressive and very outgoing, very direct. Um, so there's a lot to learn from traveling.
Exactly. So it is important to travel, and
But
think-
if you can't travel, I don't think you don't learn to love
no,
necessarily.
that's not
Yeah.
what we're saying,
Oh,
right?
okay.
And like what we mean and what Lugones means is by traveling to the world. And she doesn't mean grab a ticket and fly to the other side
Right.
of the world. No, she means meet people and like just traveling to. You have a different world in your head and I have a different world in my head. What I think
For
is
sure.
right. Exactly. So that's what she means. Just meeting people where they're at and just seeing how you fit
Mhm.
in their life and how they fit in your life where
Mhm.
you're at.
Yeah.
And just coming to terms with like just learning from people.
Yeah.
That's the beauty that I find in love and just traveling people's worlds, and it's all up
Yeah.
in our brains. So I don't know, that's what I understand from
Yeah.
this.
A question for you then,
Yes,
because the ancient Greeks had many words for different types of love, like
Mhm.
agape. And I went to a religious school my first years in college, and agape, eros, and other kinds of love. But it seems to me that we would be better off in English if we had different names for different kinds of love. Because I remember when I was young and all the girls, and this is way long ago, back when the Beatles were playing things, and girls said, "No, I love them, I love them," and it's gone on since. I mean, I saw it with
Harry
uh,
Styles.
yeah, Harry Styles, and I think, well, they don't love him, they don't know him. And actually, one of the reasons that famous people sort of scooch away from people who are trying to, like, come on, I love you, is because it's not really love. It's dependency. And I want to get this out of you. I want something for you to feed me. And I think that we need and that's not even romantic love.
No.
It's hero love, or you can make up a word for it. And then there's the love that a child has for a parent as a
Mhm.
baby, that evolves and becomes a love of an adult for their parents, which is different. I don't know how many words you would need, but I think one of our problems, especially as young people and talking about love, is that we name all kinds of things love, and we're not talking about the same emotion, the same responsibilities, or the same kind of attachment. So I don't know if she gets into that, but
Well, her conclusion says there are worlds we enter at our own risk, worlds that have agon, conquest, and arrogance as the main ingredients in their
Mhm.
ethos. These are worlds that we enter out of necessity and which would be foolish to enter playfully in either the agnostic sense or in my sense.
Mhm.
In such worlds, we are not playful.
That's wise.
But there are worlds that we can travel to lovingly, and traveling to them is part of loving at least some of their inhabitants.
Mhm.
The reason why I think that traveling to someone's world is a way of identifying with them is because by traveling to their world, we can understand what it is to be them and what it is to be ourselves in their eyes. Only then we have traveled to each other's worlds are we fully subjects to each other. I agree with Hegel that self-recognition requires other subjects, but I disagree with his claim that it requires tension or hostility.
I think you can't completely avoid tension or hostility from time to time, just because we don't live in an ideal world.
Mhm.
And people who have a relationship get upset over who doesn't close the toothpaste cap, and who wants to take the kids to church and who doesn't, or who wants sports for their family and who doesn't, or so on. I mean, you get into tension. love does not preclude tension and hostility. And sometimes it's mixed.
Right.
I mean, if you just look around you, you can see that. But it's it I would think you would need the love to overcome the tension and hostility. Many people don't know how to do that.
Mm.
And so they decide they don't love the person because what they identified was romantic love, but they don't have that. It's just what I think she's talking about, which is the interpersonal love and relationship, that I love you as a human being. And I see that you have faults or things that I don't like. And I love you enough to try to communicate and work those out.
Right.
Or I don't. I loved you romantically. We made great love, and we had good sex. We went places. We enjoyed. We traveled together, and now I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm not going to carry it any further because I don't think true love, even necessarily lasts forever. And I mean, when I was young and romantic, I kind of hoped, but then I also thought I would never get old. And that old people had made some sort of mistake that I wouldn't make. And now I've had to face the reality of life. And I appreciate now the people that love me, because I can be sure now that I'm not a young, wild, venturesome woman, that they love me in a more stable way. That it's not that they didn't love me for what I am before. It's just that you don't always know what people are. So you have to love them even if you don't completely know what they are. Parents will love their children that way, but I don't know how many spouses or brothers and sisters love the other even without knowing, and just saying, okay, if you turn out to be a murderer, or if you turn out to be a famous artist or whatever, I will still love you. And we mainly think of that as mother's love.
I think you're talking about like intimate love, like, which is fine.
Mm.
But I think
Intimate?
yeah,
What?
intimate love, like love between that you share with a person, and that you just love as we know it, not love as an interpersonal value that a person has, like with everyone that they talk to, because you're not going to go like to a person when you're stressed and a mess, and you're not going to go up to them and talk to someone because you're stressed and a mess.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Some people do go up to others and talk to them when they're stressed and a mess, though.
Yeah,
that ends
true.
a lot of relationships.
Yeah. Exactly. But I think Lugones refers to a type of love that's just like she says, a playful love, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at least starting out that way, so that we can create the culture of a culture of like of being accepting of each other.
Okay, I that's a goal that I would support. The only thing I don't understand is I still am not clear about what she's referring to as love. You've told me all these things about her and the rejection of her mother's way of showing love.
Mhm.
And so I said, so how does she want to show love?
She
Wouldn't cook me dinner. If I were,
probably not if you like just met her. But
well, no, you don't. But let's say that we were old friends.
Yeah, she would. But she's just very playful. She seems like a lighthearted person to me. So moving on to the next author, which is Dr. Martin Luther King. As you know, Dr. Martin Luther King is I don't know. What do you think about Dr. Martin Luther King?
I respect him. He had some faults, and was accused of plagiarizing and at one point womanizing. But I admire his goals, his ideals, and what he accomplished. I was sorry that he was killed in my city, in Memphis, but I think we made a lot of progress. And once he died, some of that progress backslid.
Do you agree with Dr. King in saying that hate makes you pathological?
I think it can. I think it can, because it's like I told you, I think hate is a useless thing to be. It hurts you. Like if you don't forgive people, it hurts you more than it hurts anybody else. You can destroy somebody else's life if you hate them, or a country, as in Ukraine right now, but you can't, it's not healthy.
So what do you think
But it's a
about,
human emotion. It evolved with us. So I can't say, oh, no, nobody should feel it, because they're going to.
right. So how do you feel about this? Hate is transformative.
I think any strong emotion, very, very strong, all-consuming emotion is transformative.
Do you think it can be transformed into love?
I think a person can transform themselves and overcome hate. And I mean, we have transmuted, in a way, almost like chemistry, many emotions into love. And sometimes you may start out thinking you hate somebody. I mean, lots of movies are based on that, where someone thinks they hate somebody else, and then finally they fall in love and they go off into the sunset together. I think that probably Martin Luther King needed to have the belief that they could transform it, because that was what he was attempting to do.
Do you think he had it because of his belief in God?
I think a good bit of it is, yeah, I do.
So we can say that it's right to speculate that his definition of love is idealistic.
Yes,
Yes.
but the more idealistic, as long as you've got, as long as you don't lose contact with reality and the way things work in the world, that kind of ideal leads you to a higher goal than just saying, okay, let's be realistic. These people out here are hateful, and they're people that are different from each other, hate each other, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, he looked to the possibility that we could change this racial hate that infected the United States. And it's in some ways, I think racial problems we evolved, because we evolved in small tribes and family groups. And so we tended to find the outsider, the total outsider, as our enemy, potential enemy. And we're having trouble now dealing with some of those ancient type emotions. But I think he was going the way of Christianity. He was using Christianity as his base, and he accomplished a lot.
Yeah.
I admire him.
Yes. I'll read you a bit of his writing. An individual may hate you, a race of people may hate you, but you just keep on loving, and eventually, through the power of your love, you will break them down.
Well, they may kill you first. I mean, they did with Jesus and a number of other early Christians. They did with Martin Luther King. But I think there's a kind of selflessness that allows your goal to be carried on, even if you don't accomplish it, like Moses not making it into the promised land. I think that sometimes someone like Martin Luther King is needed to foment the movement. It would have been great if he would have lived longer, but I think in some ways he's been more effective because he was assassinated.
Wow. Thank you very much for that bit of knowledge. And that'll be the end of my video.
Okay.
Goodbye, Rocky.